So you've probably been told that reasoning is this purely logical, almost mathematical process. Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on that idea and explore the surprising and much more intuitive way our minds actually work.
You know, we often think of reasoning just like this. We picture a Sherlock Holmes type, perfectly and logically deducing his way from a premise to an undeniable truth. A perfect, straight line.
But what if that's not the whole picture? What if reasoning isn't really about pure logic at all, but something closer to intuition? What if our gut feelings are actually running the show? Let's unpack that.
Okay, so to get started, let's dig into a really core idea. Whenever we reason about something, our mind is actually producing two different conclusions at the exact same time.
Here's the cool way to think about it. Reasoning is like catching a big fish that has just swallowed a smaller one. You reel it in and you get 2 for 1. The argument itself, the whole thing, that's the big fish. And the conclusion it supports, that's the smaller fish inside.
Let's make this really concrete. Say you're looking for a book. You think to yourself, okay, it's either in the study or the living room. You check the study and it's not there. So you form an argument. That entire argument, that whole line of thought, is an intuitive conclusion about your reasons. That's the first fish. And the second fish? It's the conclusion embedded right inside it. I should look for the book in the living room.
And that embedded conclusion, that little fish, actually has a specific name. It's called a reflective conclusion. And it's called that because you accepted it based on the reasons you just thought through. You're reflecting on your own thinking, even if it's just for a split second.
So this table kind of sums it all up really nicely. Our reasoning process has a direct output. That's the intuitive argument, the big picture. But it also has an indirect output. That's the specific conclusion, which we'll just call C, that you accept because you went through that larger argument.
And here is the absolute crucial takeaway. Even our most thought-out, reflective conclusions don't just spring from some pure, logical part of our brain. Nope. They're always the product of an intuitive process. Basically, a gut feeling about what seems like a good reason.
Now, this whole idea of reasoning being intuitive leads us right to the role of language. And as we're about to see, its main job might not be what you've always thought it was.
You see, the old-school classical view is that language is basically a toolkit for logic. It gives us words like if, then, or, so we can build these formal arguments. But the psychological view we're digging into today sees it differently. It sees language as a tool for social consumption, a way for us to share our reasons with other people.
I mean, really think about it. Reasons are for being social. We use language to justify our own actions, to evaluate what other people are up to try and persuade folks who see things differently, and even to just have a good old-fashioned debate with ourselves through our inner voice.
And what this means is that everyday words like but or so aren't really just logical connectors. They're more like argumentative devices. They act as heuristics, which are really just mental shortcuts, that signal to whoever's listening how they should interpret the relationship between our reasons and our conclusion.
So if reasoning is mostly intuitive and social, then what's the deal with formal logic, like a syllogism? Does it even have a point?
Okay, let's go back to Sherlock Holmes for one more adventure. He makes a statement here that seems pretty logical, right? But we're about to see why an argument that is perfectly sound from a logical point of view can still be, well, a pretty terrible argument.
So Holmes could frame his thought just like this, as a classic, logically valid syllogism. If the first two statements are true, the conclusion has to be true. It seems completely airtight. But the real strength of this argument has almost nothing to do with its logical structure.
Now, just imagine for a second that Holmes got a telegram beforehand saying, "The gardener did it." He could construct this syllogism. And guess what? It's also perfectly logically sound. But it's obviously a ridiculous argument because it's completely circular. The only reason he's saying the first part is because he already knows the conclusion is true.
This just shows us something so incredibly important. If even a perfectly logical syllogism can be a really bad argument, then what in the world actually makes an argument good? A good argument needs good, solid reasons to believe its premises in the first place, and those reasons can't be circular. Now, from a purely logical point of view, circularity isn't really a problem, but for good reasoning, it's a total deal breaker. See, logic itself doesn't provide support. The reasons behind the logic do.
Okay, so all of this has been leading to one final, really deep question. If we can't just follow the universal rules of logic, is there a single correct method for reasoning?
For some problems, the answer is a clear yes. A Sudoku puzzle is a great example. It's a very well-defined problem with crystal clear rules and one single correct solution. You can absolutely apply specific methods to solve it.
But just think about the kind of issues we all have to grapple with every day. Moral dilemmas, social conflicts, political debates, philosophical questions, even our own personal relationships. These are not neat little puzzles with a single right answer that you can find by following some step-by-step method.
The reality is, reasoning isn't about applying some universal formula. Instead, it's what's known as a metacognitive process. So, what does metacognitive actually mean here? Well, put simply, it's thinking about your thinking. Reasoning is the process of having rich and varied intuitions about your other intuitions. It's taking your hunches, your gut feelings, and evaluating whether they actually stand up as good reasons in any given context.
So, this leaves us with a final, really big thought. If reasoning isn't mainly a tool to get to some pure logical truth, then what is its real purpose? This kind of reframes everything. Maybe reasoning isn't about being right at all. Maybe it's about helping us successfully navigate a very complex, very messy, and very, very social world.